Hello, this is Weekend Handicapper from weekendhandicapper.com. In this video, we're going to give a general overview of how to bet the Belmont Stakes. So no matter what year it is, these are some general good guidelines and strategies for betting the Belmont Stakes. So hopefully some of these tips will be helpful for you. So if you're new to horse racing, you might not know what the Belmont Stakes is. You might have heard the term, and for those that do play often, bear with me while I give a brief overview of the Belmont Stakes. So in this video, we're going to talk about some common themes of the Belmont Stakes, what types of horses to look for, what kind of running style usually wins, and some tips and strategies to hopefully put you in the winner's circle or cash a ticket on the Belmont Stakes. So the Belmont Stakes is the third leg of the Triple Crown. So the Kentucky Derby, Preakness Stakes, and Triple Crown. So this race, the Belmont Stakes, takes place in New York 5 weeks after the Kentucky Derby. It's the longest of the 3 Triple Crown races. They race 1.5 miles, which is a key factor in whether or not a horse succeeds or falters at the Belmont Stakes, whether or not that horse can run 1.5 miles. Common themes of the Belmont Stakes. The Belmont Stakes produces winners at good odds. So usually, on average, they're almost 10-to-1 winners. Now here recently, I'm recording this in 2019, horses less than 5-to-1 have won. But overall, generally, we have seen some pretty good prices and get a lot of value for your win wager in the Belmont Stakes. So typically mid-price horses do well in the win position. Use those long shots just like any other day. Try to find the long shots. They might not win the race, but you can certainly use them in exactas, trifectas, and superfectas, but not too long. If you're somebody that plays these big bombs, 30-to-1, 40-to-1, 50-to-1, those sorts of horses, Belmont Stakes typically doesn't, just like most races, typically they don't factor in and win the race. I'm no genius, I know, or stating the obvious, but if you're somebody that's looking for a bomb, this probably isn't the race to do it in. Wait for Breeders' Cup or one of those sorts of situations. And horses trained by super trainer Todd Pletcher usually factor in the top 3 positions here recently. So he's a very good trainer, as we all know, but he does especially well getting horses ready for the Belmont Stakes. So keep your eye out for any horse that is trained by Todd Pletcher, especially at a good price. There have been more wins by inside post than any other post in the Belmont Stakes. Post number 1 has the most winners. And what's interesting, if you look this up, anybody can look this up, the further outside you get, so you start from post 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it's almost like the amount of winners have reduced as you go more to the outside. Now, part of that is, and I certainly understand this, not every year you have full fields or enough horses. It's not like every year you have 12 horses, 10 horses in the Belmont, or 14 horses in the Belmont. So therefore, the numbers are going to be less on the outside because there's, for the simple fact that there are every year there aren't the same amount of horses, enough of horses to fill up entire starting gate. But I think there is something to that, to the fact that inside posts have won more than the outside post. So if you like a horse, especially the first position, second position, third, fourth, fifth, then you should be confident. If you have other factors or reasons that you like that horse, then you should feel pretty good that that's another plus for that horse to potentially win the Belmont. Now, as of 2019, Post 7 has produced 12 Belmont winners as well, so that's a good post. So if your horse ends up number 7 and in the number 7 post position, then history has said that that's a pretty good post position for that horse. So inside post, that's something to keep an eye out no matter what year. They have historically done really well, those inside post positions. Now, what kind of horses to look for? So this is interesting. Horses that have skipped the Kentucky Derby and the Preakness have frequently won. So that means new shooters, whatever you want to call them, horses that have had plenty of rest, have skipped the first 2 legs of the Triple Crown, they have won more than any other horses, I think, the past 40, 50 years. Those kind of horses. So do not be afraid that since these horses haven't ran in these big races, like the Kentucky Derby and the Preakness, that you shouldn't even include them. Quite the contrary. Those could be legitimate contenders. But also a close second, horses that have raced in the Kentucky Derby but skipped the Preakness should also be a factor. Maybe that is they've had more time to rest, I'm sure. They need some well-deserved time off. Now they're a little bit fresher than the horses that have run both the Kentucky Derby and Preakness. So look for those kind of horses. Look for horses that skip the Derby and the Preakness altogether, and pay attention to any horse that ran in the Kentucky Derby but skipped the Preakness. Now, that isn't to say that horses that ran in the Kentucky Derby and the Preakness can't win. They certainly can. Just look here recently, Justified and American Pharoah, Triple Crown winners. Here recently, that's been okay. But I'm looking at all the data throughout the past 40, 50 years especially, but as a whole, ever since the Belmont has been ran. Running style. I'm a huge, if you watch these other videos I have on my YouTube channel, Weekend Handicapper, or check out weekendhandicapper.com, I'm a huge proponent of pace handicapping. Horses' running styles and how the race is going to be run, in my opinion, is one of the most important handicapping fundamentals that you can use, and it plays itself out all the time. So when it comes to the Belmont, horses whose running style is near the lead and likes to sit right behind the front runners are preferred, just like the Preakness. So if you watch my video that's similar to this one that shows you the general overall tips and strategies for winning the Preakness, it's the same here in the Belmont. Near the front of the pack, or right behind the leaders, early speed is where horses usually win from. Now, lone speed hardly ever wins. So if you're betting a horse that's going to wire the field, that hardly ever happens. Justified did it, but Justify is an amazing horse and won the Triple Crown. Not every horse is Justify. So Justify could probably do whatever he wanted to and probably could beat most horses in most years. So just keep that in mind. Early speed by itself might not be a positive, but right behind that early speed, a horse that likes to kind of sit back just a little bit off those front runners have an excellent chance. History has shown this. Now, contrary to what most people think, the fact that the Belmont is 1.5 miles, people automatically assume it favors a closer. I guess they think that the front runners get tired and the ones that are not running as fast early have more time to close in and get caught up. But it's not really true. Closers don't necessarily win the Belmont like most people think. Again, it's those pressers, those horses that lay just off the front runners that typically win the Belmont. So keep that in mind when you're handicapping and looking for how the race is going to be run, the race shapes. Look for those horses right off those front runners. And I think you will be rewarded because, historically speaking, that's where the winner comes from. Now, you don't necessarily throw out early speed horses. And what I mean by that is you use them, still certainly use them in your vertical wagers. So your exactas, trifectas, superfectas. Use those early speed horses. Use those horses that are right off the front runners, and use those closers. And that's a common setup, a common formula for any day at the races. Actually, if you can mix up early speed horses with horses right off the front with closers, that's how you win your exactas and your trifectas and your superfectas. Have a nice little mixture of those pace styles, running styles. So keep that in mind. Closers don't do as well as you think. Do they win some years? Of course, just like any other race. But overall, the horses that are right off the front, early speed, are the ones that typically win the Belmont. Let's talk about some other important factors and sum this up. So the trend is mid-price horses. So if you like a horse at a decent price, say 4-1, 5-1, all the way up to 10-1. Here recently it's 9-1 or less that wins. Then bet that horse. Another huge factor, very important angle, is pedigree handicapping. And the reason this is in the Belmont is this is the longest of the Triple Crown races, 1.5 miles. And we usually don't have much to go on when it goes to these kind of distances. These horses typically hadn't run this distance that many times, if ever. So pedigree, is that horse, are these horses bred to go that distance? So you want to get really good and do some research on pedigree handicapping. Who's the bloodlines, the sire, the dam? Who has went those distances before? Are they bred to go this large distance of 1.5 miles? Pedigree becomes very important when it comes to the Belmont. So do some research. You know, there's plenty of websites that kind of break down the pedigree angles and whether or not horses will get the distance or not. Now, if you have other factors like the running style, speed figures, horses in good form, good trainer connections, I wouldn't throw out a horse, but just because you might not think it's been bred for the distance. But more than any other Triple Crown race, in my opinion, maybe the Derby's a close second. Pedigree handicapping is vital when it comes to trying to pick a winner of the Belmont. So pay particular attention to pedigree handicapping and ask yourself this question. Has the horse, or is the horse, bred for 1.5 miles? Should it have a problem with 1.5 miles? And I think you will find some strong contenders if you ask yourself that question. Again, strongly consider horses trained by Todd Pletcher. The guy usually has horses ready to roll in the Belmont. Use long shots in exactas, trifectas, and superfectas. Don't be afraid to bet horses that skip both the Kentucky Derby and Preakness, as I stated before. Horses that raced in the Kentucky Derby should also be a factor. And then horses that are bred for the distance, they like to be right behind the lead, early running style, so near the lead type horses, and are in good form with an inside post position should be good bets, excellent bets, in my opinion. So that pretty much sums it up. What you're going to look for, historically, this is the key, I think. The combination of the horses being bred for the distance. So if you do some research and you see that, and it shouldn't have a problem with the 1.5 miles, check that box. What kind of running style does it have? Does it have a early kind of pressing, kind of right off the front runner kind of running style? If so, check that box. If they're in good form, pretty fresh, or been running good, working out good, check that box. Did it draw an inside post? When I say inside post, the more inside the better typically, but don't throw a horse out because it's starting from 4th or 5th or even 7th, as I showed, has some good luck, or historically speaking, has won quite a bit from the 7th position. They should be good bets. So you factor all that in, and hopefully you can isolate a contender or two that will help you cash on the Belmont Stakes. So this is the Weekend Handicapper. If you hadn't already, I'd appreciate it if you subscribe to Weekend Handicapper's YouTube channel and visit weekendhandicapper.com for all the latest tutorials and resources. And I just want to help people stop losing money at the track and hopefully win money at the track. Win more than you ever thought you could or ever have. And it comes down to making intelligent decisions and being disciplined and having patience, all those things. And I realize that a lot of people don't usually bet all the time or year round, but what they do bet is the Triple Crown races. So hopefully this video will help you start winning more Triple Crown races, such as the Belmont Stakes. But if you hadn't already, I'd appreciate it if you subscribe, hit that notification button so you can get the latest videos as soon as I roll them out, and visit weekendhandicapper.com. And until next time, as always, happy handicapping and smart wagering.